Hello, everybody, and welcome back to what is going to be another week of drifting by the feeling of this car. I am Aaron Smith, and you join me in the commentary booth with Ron Mons, and in the production booth we have the much beloved Samuli Kumo. And well, after last week, Ron, I mean, what kind of magical predictions have you got for us this week?
I think it's gonna be hectic, and that's about it. I really got nothing else. The track it's a lot more complicated than Road America was last week for race 1 of the Radicals this year. So I think this race with only one straightaway, that being the main straightaway, and really turns galore, you have no area to rest. I think it's gonna be hectic.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better, to be honest. It's going to be mayhem. It's going to be just, we don't know. You know, this car, after some thorough testing by Ron this week, we have found out that actually, yes, this car is terrible to drive now in the brand new update. And well, I think what I said last week was wrong. And yeah, I admit to that. I apologize. And yeah, this car really is horrible to drive now. And I understand completely why people were spinning left, right, and center this week. But hopefully, after another week of practice, they might have gotten used to it a little bit more. As currently in qualifying, we have the Iberian driver David Jordan, the number 2, got quite a big disparity in iRacing once again for this week. The lowest in this lobby is 300, and I believe the highest in this lobby is about 6,000, if I'm not wrong, something around there. It's a big skill gap, and yeah, you're gonna see maybe only the top 5 being anywhere close to each other. Then you'll have sort of the bottom half of the grid maybe being, you know, really close. And yeah, as you can see, they're very different iRacing levels, which could spice things up a little bit.
Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge, just navigating this track, period, navigating the car. I did a couple laps here. You know, while I was driving this, I was curious. I had a sneaking suspicion in my mind. So I hopped into the old Radical, the Radical SR8, and actually managed to do a lap 10 seconds quicker than my lap in these cars. So even more of a challenge navigating this track is going to be navigating this car and trying to kind of wrap your mind around trying to just keep it on the road. I mean, I've said this multiple times. I've said this on my first broadcast here with the Radicals last season at the Nordschleife. It's going to be a race survival here today.
Yeah, definitely. I think even as we said last week, had you just not spun once and just kept it on the track, you would have finished 3rd, probably. So I think people this week may be getting used to the car a little bit more. And yeah, just having different goals than you might have had last season, where last season this car suffered from a lot of understeer, as it has done really for, well, since it came out. It's a very naturally understeery car. And this season, they've decided to sprinkle a bit of oversteer at completely random points onto it, which, as you can see from Robert Woodward's perspective, yeah, that's my point proven. Understeer on corner entry and oversteer on corner exit.
I have a little bit of a story to share while we're in qualifying on board with Robert Woodward. I do a lot of kart racing myself outside of my work here on Apex Racing TV. And I remember one time getting back from a run, my dad asked me how the kart was driving, to which I said, we have understeer, oversteer, all the steers. We could open up a cattle farm with the amount of steers that these guys are dealing with. It'll be understeer going into the corner, we might be able to see it here, understeer in, and then snap oversteer. Yeah, you can see he had to correct it a little bit, didn't have to countersteer too much, going through the second to last corner. Yeah, looks like he slowed down a little bit in the middle sector, so I don't think this is going to be a pole lap from him, but
Yeah, and just looking at the gaps in qualifying, you can really see who is pushing a lot more and who just can't get the car hooked up. And yeah, it's a bit of a shame, really, what they have done to this car. And as I said earlier on, yeah, just what I said last week was, yeah, wrong. And yeah, I can completely sympathize with everyone on how this car felt. And yeah, I mean, hopefully this week is that's Rodelli getting on the grass a little bit before, I believe that was turn 6 he was coming into. But yeah, these guys have got a real challenge. I mean, especially around Zandvoort, which we all know is not an easy track to navigate. It's yeah, going to be a little bit of a challenge to keep it on the track. But if you can, you know, you're probably going to get a really decent finish. And another example of this car just being wacky, I guess is how you could put it, is compare the qualifying times of last season. You know, we had the likes of Ralston, Woodward, Reitenen, all being up there fairly close. And now they're like seconds apart, which really goes to show how just... I don't know what they did to this car specifically, but whatever they did, it was wrong. And iRacing should probably fix it within, well, the quickest time possible. Would do us everyone a pretty good favor. But qualifying is over, with the gap from pole being around 4.5 seconds on a relatively short lap. This is going to be interesting. David Jordan then on pole position, with Felix Simoes lining up just behind him. Then Santiago Lieb in third, Mike Clark in fourth, David Ralston in fifth, Rodelli in sixth place, Gonzaga seventh, Woodward in eighth, Damani and Guy in ninth place, and Reitenen in 10th. And then to round off your final few places on the grid, we have Jack Liston, Toto Galaria, Alex May, Mike Hawthorne, Gajario in 15th, Colburn 16th, Peterson in 17th, and Macatanio in 18th. But we just about are ready to go for racing. It's 5 red lights, and we are underway here in Zandvoort. It's a pretty good start for Simoes. Jordan bogging down a little bit off the line. Simoes is already ahead, as behind them they're going nearly 3 wide into turn 1. It looks like they're all just about keeping it on. There's a little bit of contact between Ralston, and I think that's Rodelli who he made contact with. But as we finish up the first few corners of the lap, then Simoes getting the jump, and I think that's Reitenen off in the background. It is. I think he hit the wall, and yeah, he's already called it quits. Don't really blame him. Bit of a shame for him, as we know he's quick, but yeah, this car proving too difficult for him. But as we come to the end of the first sector, it's Simoes in the lead.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think we need shark-themed deliveries, because these cars are really biting the drivers throughout. I think they'll bite the drivers throughout this whole year. We see them already. Yeah, that's a tough break for Reitenen. That section, when I was driving this car earlier, looked really tricky. You got the weight transfer, then you got brake pretty much while you're turning. If you just get it a little bit wrong there, you're setting yourself directly into the wall. So tough break for him there, but besides that, pretty clean so far.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure if Reitenen did make contact with anyone, or he did just slide off into the barrier by himself. But yeah, as you said, relatively clean. I think there's a car that's gone off somewhere. I heard a lot of sliding as we come into the final few corners of lap 1. I think Liston lost out to Woodward somewhere. And that's Patterson also off. Oh. Yep. He's got to be careful coming back onto the track, as he is being very careful. But there's a number 16 off as well.
Yeah, I mentioned it was going to be a trouble hitting the brakes in these cars. I mentioned this off broadcast, how going into these corners, you can't really exceed 65% trying to hit the brakes, because otherwise they're going to either lock the fronts, lock the rears, or lock all 4 and go into the gravel no matter what. So, and that 2 cars in a row there, so, oh boy, kind of proving our points there.
Yeah, I mean, as if... I think they might have changed the way this car brakes as well, because before, I remember you could just kind of stamp on it and then you trail brake into the corner and you should be fine. But yeah, they really have just done something strange to this car. And I was going to say some people might like it, but I highly doubt that. But that is Ralston going for a very opportunistic move, and Gonzaga goes...
There he was, yeah.
Yeah, Gonzaga just pushed Rodelli sort of off as he tried to make his way through there as well. They all managed to keep it just about on the track though. That's Woodward trying to make up ground after he slipped back a little bit. He's got Guy in front of him into this next corner. Not really a a great overtaking opportunity unless you have massive balls. But yeah, he just has to sit behind for now as we're going to have a little bit of a slipstream train. Now, I think that's Ralston who's leading this. And yeah, the other 4 cars ahead have sort of ran away with it. As I said before, the different skill levels of this new SR10 and everyone trying to get used to it. As Samo's putting in some good laps, but this is Woodward's chance. He's got the slipstream into turn 1. We are about to go. Who's going to be last on the brakes? Woodward could have gotten on the brakes a little bit later there, but Guy just manages to hold on as, yeah, Ron, you're making some strange noises as that got way too close for comfort.
Yeah, you know, I think he could have probably gone for it there down the inside at turn 1, but you can see that gap was, if he did go for it, that probably would have ended in an accident because, you know, the gap was there at first, but as they got to the curb, it just quickly disappeared.
Yeah, I was sort of making the same noises you were in my head. I was kind of just like bracing for it. I thought they were going to make contact, but fair play, they didn't make contact, which is always good to see. We like good, clean racing, and we know Woodward is a nice, clean driver and very, very consistent as well. So we'll see if he can make up any places, which he seems to have some decent pace so far. Let's just hope he can keep it on the track. I think last week he was one of the victims. Well, I mean, one of the many victims of this new car, which only saw 2 people not make any sort of mistakes. As, yeah, the participation in this car has drastically dropped from even last season. Cut by about half, I'd say, which you never really want to see. You always want to see as many racers on here as you possibly can. But as we come around the final corner, I think Woodward's going to have an even better chance than he did last lap. He's so close to Guy now. He's got the slipstream even more than before as we go into turn 1.
There we go. I think he'll have the perfect opportunity to get the move done. He goes for it. Yeah, that looks like a position gain for Woodward there.
Yeah, that was a pretty textbook overtake. Nothing wrong with what either driver did. Nice, good, clean racing. And we'll see if Woodward can get ahead of Ridelli, who has been in the walls already, off into the grass, whilst Ralston tried to make his way through. And yeah, we'll see if Ridelli can hold off Woodward. But Woodward in that pink car's got some good pace right now, you know. And maybe he might even be able to challenge the likes of Gonzaga up front. We'll have to wait and see for that. But Ralston at the moment in 5th is sort of separating himself from this pack now, as he got off to a poor start as well. Slipped back a little bit, but made his way back up to 5th. As Woodward already trying to put Ridelli under a little bit of pressure, sticking his nose up some of these corners and just letting him know he's there, just trying to get into his mind, which we know is very, very important in these cars, as this braking zone is not the easiest at all as you come into this final few sectors. And well, we'll see if Woodward can be anywhere near Ridelli around this final corner.
I think all the braking zones in this car are really difficult. You know, we saw cars locking up earlier. You could just see 2 tire marks just dug into the gravel as drivers lost control. Oh, you said that was a textbook overtake from Woodward, but really, with the way these cars are driving, no overtake is really easy. You could say, like, yeah, normal series, like going from 8th to 1st in the span of about 10 laps is easy in some series, but here it's a lot easier said than done with the way these cars are running. He's got a lot of pace, though, we'll give him that, but it's really just hitting your marks, hoping to God that some drivers ahead of you make mistakes, and just really keeping it clean yourself, keeping it on the road.
Ooh, and that's Galeria off
on the exit. Keeping it on the road.
I think Leap's gone off as well.
Oh,
Leap
yeah.
has. That's the 3rd place, man. He's just managed to keep out of the wall. Gonna have to be a bit careful coming back onto the track. I think he had a little bit of a window there, but chose to be safe. And yeah, as you were just saying, you know, we're only 5 laps in, and I mean, already we have, you know, not as many mistakes as we did last week, but yeah, mistakes are everything now in this series. And if you can keep it on the track, you're gonna finish well. But this is what happened to Lieb coming into turn 8, and yeah, just it's like what we saw from Woodward in qualifying. The car just lets go.
I think that was a mix of probably locking the rears on entry, because you see he was a bit squiggly. He was very close to the grass. I know from experience driving this car that if you get anywhere near the grass while trying to hit the brakes, you are done for. I think we'll see the take from Woodward. He has a really good run coming out of the final corner. In real life, that's bang, but here it's flat as he gets the move done into turn 1.
Yeah, Woodward really doing some pretty good overtakes right now, and he might have not had the best qualifying pace, and of course he made that mistake on his second lap, but putting in some good laps, and I said he might be. Oh, that's Lieb off again. Lieb really struggling, and I guess when you sort of overheat the tires in this car, it just gets worse and worse. So he's gonna have to take this whole next lap, I'd say, really easy and try and cool those tires down. Otherwise he's gonna be in for a world of pain, and that's really a shame, as we saw Lieb again last season fighting for wins, and this season just mistake after mistake, and you can't really blame him.
It's just not being able to get used to the car. Oh, we saw a big wiggle there, another big wiggle, a series of big wiggles going through that turn. He's having a real trouble getting through there clean. I don't think I managed to go through clean on any fast lap through there. I was joking with some of my buddies earlier that probably the fastest way to drive around this track, well, the cleanest way to drive around this track would be with a pit limiter on, driving around at 37 miles an hour. And you mentioned earlier, you mentioned earlier how you might have overheated those tires. I think it also might be a bit of a mind game as well. You know, driving this car the way that is, you really gotta be focused all the time, because if you like, oh yeah, I might be able to brake a little bit later into this turn, you're just gonna lock up. And you know, we've seen a lot of drivers do that. It's maybe being a bit overzealous at times. I think that's a car
that's a spinner. That's Galeria, I think. That is the Frenchman. That was midway through the last corner as well. So yeah,
it dropped it on exit. Yeah.
It's so strange, and it makes me feel even worse after what I said last week, because you know, I thought the car hadn't changed too much, but I was very wrong. And yeah, I think Woodward's just made a little bit of a mistake as well. Not too big. He managed to keep it on and keep ahead of Rodelli. But yeah, just this car, I think the way you ought to drive it, run really high, like to the front brake bias, as yeah, you might lock the fronts a lot more, but it's a lot better than locking the rears, as it seems, and it will keep those rears. It will also keep those rears in check in terms of tire temperatures. And there's the number 16 making way. And yeah, some of these guys also short shifting a little bit just to aid in that traction out of corners. And yeah, you can't. I mean, if that's all they can do, just to keep it on the track. And yeah, you can see the number 16, Mike Horton, just struggling so much right now. Hence why he is a lap down.
Oh yeah, you can see the steering lock he has to put in just going through that corner. I mean, that's not a very tricky corner. Especially that last one there. In the old Radical, I was able to go through there flat out fairly easily. If you try to go flat out through the final corner, through the R-line dyke corner, flat out in this car, you're taking a one-way trip to the barrier. Yeah, full lock, barely keeping it on the road. I mean, that's... You gotta feel bad for these drivers. You know, it's a mix of, to be fast in this series, for this season at least, you gotta have a mix of just having a war-hardened stomach. Oh, as we see him go off. Where's the camera's cut?
I think, listen,
yeah, just another car going off.
Oh, he's gonna have to be careful.
Oh, God bless America. There wasn't any contact there. I had some untimely patriotism there. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, as soon as we cut to Liston, just could not keep the car under control into 3. And yeah, I mean, it really does make you think about what these drivers are going through right now just to keep it on the track. And I was just having a thought about this. Maybe the way to keep this car on the track is, if anyone knows this, how Alonso used to drive in Formula 1, just absolutely yeet the front axle into the corner and force the car to understeer wide, as the way he would take a corner would be very sort of, he would just point the nose in very sharply sort of understeer wide off to the track. And I think that's how these guys are going to have to drive this car because, in my opinion, oversteer is much, much worse than understeer. I would much rather have an understeery car than an oversteery car. And I know people have differing driving styles, but I feel like an understeery car you can handle better. You can really change how it feels and how it drives. Whereas oversteer, it's kind of just, you know, if you have a bunch of oversteer on corner exit, there's not really much you can do.
To gain a chance, and I don't know if anyone in the audience today has ever driven a GT3 car and they get stuck in like a really slow spin where you're on the gas, you're on the brakes, you try and do everything to get it out of spin, but you just can't pull it out, and it feels like 10 seconds passes by before you actually come to a stop. It's what it's like driving these cars. I mean, I'm more of a fan of oversteer myself, but I think you're right. I think with this car, as we see another car off, I think car's off.
I think that might have been contact. I'm not 100% sure. We're obviously going to get Smooly to give us a replay on that, but yeah, I'm not sure if they, Galera and Liston made contact there, as Liston has towed back to the pits. I mean, they're awfully close, so I'd be very, very surprised if they didn't make contact.
Especially in this area where it's not really good for racing. We'll see him enter the turn here, and yep, contact there.
Oh, that's a big hit for both drivers, yeah.
Oh, man, it's
I think
a tough break, you know. I was having trouble with that corner earlier. They have various different braking points for these drivers going through there, and that just caught the both of them out there, and they're both involved in an incident, and their chance to compete in this race are pretty much over.
Yeah, and I think maybe Galera just underestimated the amount of speed he was gaining on Liston. And maybe Liston as well, we saw him go off earlier on. Maybe Liston was just trying to take it easy and just keep it on the track. Maybe went into that corner a little bit slower and braked earlier than Galera thought he would. And yeah, just unfortunate for both drivers as Liston has towed back to the pits. And Galera carried on, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that SR10 has got a lot of damage on it as he's slipping back a little bit. But his race isn't over yet. We'll keep an eye on him, see if he can make his way back into the top 10, as you never know. One of the other drivers might make a mistake. It's very likely. But we're now focusing on the battle for 5th, which has kind of been brewing for a little while now, as Woodward has put in some good laps over the course of this race, ever since that opening lap, where he got off to a pretty poor start, but has made good progress and is actually, I think he's 2 places up he is on where he started, and maybe he can make it 3. But I don't think on this time round he's quite close enough. As we come on to lap 11 of this Grand Prix, we're actually, you know, very, very close to the end of it. And yeah, these races really do fly by. But someone who we've not really paid much attention to is Felix Samoes, who has put in a superb performance, it has to be said. And well, Ron, I don't think anyone's going to be able to beat him.
Yeah, I mean, last time out in Road America, he was pretty much in a different postal code the whole time. He was just so, you know, seeing it again, you know, he's, well, I mean, I say only a second and a half ahead of David Alexis Jordan running in second currently, but you know, that's a decent gap, all things considered. You know, in F1 that'd be considered like a, well, in NASCAR that'd be considered a mile. In F1 that'd be fairly close considering the competitiveness, at least last season, and looks like this season so far. You know, he still has a pretty gap. I mean, he can't only pull a second and a half most of the race, but you know, he's put a very good race together, still kept it on the track. But that, I mean, you were saying earlier, that's just the biggest key racing in this series, just keeping your car alive, keeping yourself on the road, and you'll be setting yourself up pretty good there.
Yeah, I was just having a little thought to myself with the whole controversy going on with F1 esports and some people supposedly using grid packs. I think if anyone needs it, it's these guys. I mean, I know F122's traction has always been pretty bad, but I mean, I think these guys are going through worse than what those guys are. Because this car is really, really unpredictable a lot of the time, and that's when a car is difficult. You know, if a car is oversteery or understeery, you know, it's whatever, but you know it's there. You know what it will do. You know how it will react in certain situations. But when you have an unpredictable car like this, you go into every corner. Yeah, you go into every corner with your eyes closed and your butt clenched. You don't know how you will come out the other end, or even if you will come out the other end. And that's why some of these drivers are just struggling so much, because they just don't know how this car is going to handle in the next corner, because their tires may have overheated slightly. The car might just give up all traction just for no reason. And yeah, that's why, especially some of these lower guys, like you're saying right now, Alex May, like some of these less experienced drivers are really struggling, as he reverses straight into the wall and loses his rear wing. The lesser experienced drivers don't have enough time in this car in previous seasons or even this season to know what to do in these situations, which is why you see some of the top drivers handling this a lot better, as we saw last week with Philip Vandenhoek and Samoes. And Samoes again this week, like Ron was saying, handling it really well, as I think Woodward has made a mistake somewhere, as he's lost about half a second. Actually, more than that, lost about 8/10 around that final corner. Maybe we might be able to take a sneak peek at what happened.
That was a pretty slow lap from him. He was into the 136.2 range on that last lap, so
yeah,
definitely did something wrong there, as we see going through the final corner. Running wide, yeah, I think, oh, he managed to keep that out of the walls. A freaking miracle as far as I'm concerned. Oh, I mean, I said earlier, just going through that last corner flat out is... I mean, to do that, you pretty much have to have a death wish. I think Woodward tried it there. I think he might regret it. I think he, like, just pulled every muscle in his legs trying to save that there, because he probably had to balance the pedals quite a lot there to try and put that thing on the road, but... I think he probably realized, like, yeah, maybe just keep this thing on the road and keep hitting my marks. I mean, he's currently in 6th now, which will be a big improvement to how he finished last week. I believe he finished outside the top 20 after crashing on the 2nd lap. So, be a big improvement for him. I know he probably wants to get that top 5. It's had better performances, but, you know, that's just, oh, as we see another car off there. Is number 15 of Jack Liston. We saw him crash earlier.
Yeah, we've seen him. Yeah, we've seen him struggle all race, and that's what I was saying earlier on, that some of these lesser experienced guys really just don't have the experience to know how to handle an unpredictable car. Whereas someone like Santiago Leib, he's not had the greatest race, but he's still gonna try and give it his all as he's trying to go for a move on Guy. Bit of an optimistic dive into turn 1, couldn't quite get it done. As Ron was saying earlier, the brakes on this car now really, really sensitive, as if you so much as go a tiny bit outside of its window where you can or won't lock up the rears or the fronts, it's such a fine line when you're both side by side into a corner, sort of on the edge of braking. And I think Rodelli also has made a mistake up front, as he's lost a huge chunk of time. And yeah, there's gravel being kicked up. So yeah, he's been off. I believe that's at turn 6. And yeah, he's lost around 6 seconds to Woodward. He was right on his tail and might even fall into the depths of these guys if he's not careful. But Lieb then looking very, very feisty. He's going to try and go for the move around the outside now.
Oh, boy. He nearly got it done. If these cars had a bit more grip, I think that would have been a move done for him. So, well, he might go for it at the hair at the chicane. Not a lot of room for error at that chicane, especially going on the brakes. We saw cars go off. Big wiggle out of it. Lieb there.
Oh, and that's Gonzaga under pressure from Woodward as we cross the line to start the final lap, as Woodward breezes past, but Gonzaga isn't going to give this up. He goes extremely late on the brakes. That could have been a huge crash, but he just managed to keep it on without making contact. And these two have been relatively similar on pace. I think Woodward might have the advantage a little bit. But you know what? I've been watching the timing sheets, and Jordan in second place has gained a lot of time. Yeah, he's closing in.
For the final bit of this race, for the final portion, be real close between these two. You know, I was looking earlier. Jordan managed to set the fastest lap at 1:34.08. Now that is just barely quicker than Samoa's fastest lap, but it's still the fastest lap of this race. I think given a lot of time. I mean, it's only 0.7 of a second, less than 0.7 of a second between these two. Just don't think he'll have enough time.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there. I think Samoa's has just managed to hold off Jordan for now. These two have put on a really good performance. Have been the stars of the field today. Samoa's then winning here in Zandvoort. A very impressive performance by him. Jordan kept him honest pretty much the whole race within about a second and a half. These two really standing out amongst everyone else as Clark coming around the final corner. Going to be best of the rest pretty much in third, about 15-ish seconds behind. Actually, never mind, 20-odd seconds behind. That gap really did grow. I think Clark might have just had a really poor last lap. Ralston coming home in fifth. Woodward with a very impressive race in fifth. Gonzaga just losing out to Woodward in the end. I think there might have been a little bit of a mistake from Gonzaga somewhere. Ridelli in seventh, putting on a decent performance as well. There's our last car in the top 10. Galaria, who we saw make a mistake earlier on, not having his best race, but still up 2 places from where he started. Decent race from him, but that mistake that he made with Liston is gonna just linger on this 10th place, and I think Liston might have a few words to say after the race. But a pretty decent race all round, a big improvement off last week. As you know,
last week it was what, 22 out of 24 competitors got involved in some kind of incident during the broadcast. Today, how many cars out of the 18 field were involved in an accident? I mean,
I'd say
at most like 8.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's still not the best in the world. You know, you never really like seeing cars spew off, especially some of those parts in the race where there's just go to one camera shot with a car going off, and then there'd be another car going off of the next camera shot. So you don't really want that, but it's still a lot cleaner than the last race at Road America. So hopefully we can see more improvement, and by the time the season rounds up at the Nordschleife, 12 weeks time on June 2nd, we'll have a pretty clean race.
Yeah, we can dream and hope, and maybe they might have improved the car by then, but who knows? We can
hope for the best.
Yeah, I think this car is in desperate need of some kind of improvement. But anyway, after today's race, Felix Samoes being the victor here at Zandvoort, and David Jordan only finishing 0.7 behind him, and then 20 seconds back was Mike Clark. Those two at the top really putting on a good performance. And then David Ralston in 4th, Robert Woodward with another impressive performance by him in 5th, Gonzaga in 6th, Radelli in 7th, Damien Gee in 8th, Santiago Lieb in 9th, Toto Galaria in 10th place. And then the rest of the cars were pretty much a lap down, with Colburn in 11th, Patterson in 12th, May in 13th, Godrario in 14th, Liston in 15th, and then your non-finishers, Mike Hawthorne, Suli Reitinen, and Simon McCartonio in 18th place, who did not start the race. Not sure what happened with him. Maybe he drove the car in qualifying and just thought, no, I'm not doing this. And
don't blame him. I mean, I look at him, his iRating is at 349, so I don't think his iRating, I don't think he wants his iRating to go any lower. So I think he was like, you know what, it's safe and not even hit the track.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, I mean, you still do lose iRating for not finishing. Maybe he's trying to purposely get low iRating. We don't know. But yeah,
experiment of his.
But actually, this is a rare moment in Radicals. We have a person waiting for an interview, and it is your first place man, Felix Samoes. Felix, jumping Jordan off the line and storming into the lead and keeping it for the rest of the race. Talk us through just this car and how difficult it is to keep it on the track.
Oh, hello. Yeah, so the beginning of the race, so the start was a key moment, definitely, because it's very hard to overtake here. In regards to the car to be very difficult to drive, it is different than most of the cars, because it's a very powerful car. It gains speed very easily, and you can be mistaken to think you need less space to brake than you actually do. And I think that's what many people struggle with this car, is the braking distance is normally larger than what you would expect, especially if you compare with the SR8. And on top of that, you have to be very careful with the tires. Otherwise, if you overheat the tires, you're done. I mean, you will lose a couple of laps until you cool them down and you can go back to pace.
Yeah, we saw that a few times during this race where some drivers would even get like a slight bit of oversteer and then they might make a mistake, or for laps on end they will be slower or just taking it easy, just trying to keep it on the track. But you seem to have it fairly under control. And was it difficult keeping Jordan behind, or did you feel relatively comfortable?
No, I couldn't make a single mistake. I believe our pace was very similar. So if any of us would do a mistake, we would lose contact. Or I could lose the first place, and David could lose could just fall behind. But yeah, so I gave it all I got. So and the focus was not to do any mistakes. So I knew my pace was good enough as long as I didn't do any mistakes. I did a couple small mistakes here and there, but nothing serious. So and because of that, I managed to stay in front, because David really pushed on the last couple of laps, and then I just put my head down. Don't do mistakes. Just do your pace, no mistakes, and that was enough.
I was going to ask you about the nerves towards the end of that race. I have just a real quick question here. You know, this is a very technical track, a lot of tight, twisty bits. What, in your opinion, was probably the toughest corner to nail for 15 laps to take the victory today?
Those I believe it's turns 9 and 10 for me are the hardest ones, because you have to really hang on the brakes to go into the corners, trail braking, and it's very, very easy to lose the rear of the car. For me, those are probably the two most difficult corners, especially turn 10, the left-hander, and also I don't know that when you come up the hill and then there's this right downhill sweeper, which is also difficult to get to know the line, but once you do, it's a very rewarding corner to do it at a high speed. I believe those are the most difficult corners. Also, the second to last corner, I noticed, if you do it right, you can gain a lot of time, and I was gaining around 1/10 to 2/10 to David just on that corner alone. Yeah, that's it.
Well, it's been an honor, Felix, and that's 2 weeks in a row you've had some pretty decent performances. And well, before we let you go to already start practicing for next week, is there anyone you want to thank?
Yeah, as usual. I mean, the guys at Apex Racing TV, you doing the commentary, it's always fun to go back and rewatch the race and watch and hear what you guys saying. And the Radical for putting up the broadcast. That's it. And everybody involved, because last race was a bit chaotic, but I think this one was a bit better. I haven't looked. I have to watch the broadcast, but I mean the back markers, most of them they pulled out of the way, so everybody behaved really nice. So I think that's it.
It was a very clean race from our perspective. I think if you're a fan of untimely American patriotism and very strange noises as we saw drivers lock up or nearly go off the track, I think you'll be a fan of today's broadcast. So thank you for your compliments. It means the
Okay,
world
fair
to
enough.
me, Aaron, and Samuli working behind the scenes. And yeah, congratulations. Very good performance from you. Very dominating as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, that was your race winner, Felix Samos, being best of everyone today. And well, we'll see if he will be able to match his performances for the coming weeks, as he looks to be the man to beat, unless anyone else can take up to his throne. But that's going to do it for us today. Been an absolute honour to commentate on these races as always. I've been Aaron Smith, Run Mounds in the commentary booth. Always a pleasure to be beside you, and our lovely Samuli Kumo in the production booth doing another fantastic job on this race. And we will see you all next week.